What is radical stewardship of relationships? In this video, I'm going to explore 5 core concepts that will demonstrate and show you what radical stewardship of relationships actually is, and a few practical ways that you can start to apply it right now in your business. So, core concept number 1 is we see people made in the image of God through business. So each person is made in the image of God, imago Dei, and what that means is that each person is unique. They have their own set of gifts, life experiences, interests, and we should treat each and every person that we interact with the same level of dignity, respect, as image bearers, regardless of who they are, their social status, their economic status. In the context of business, it is regardless of if they are your highest paying client or someone that just interacts with your social media post. And why we should do that is that, well, the first is that this is how we reflect Christ in what we do through our business. It ensures consistency in what we do. But also a core concept of treating people as image bearers through business and marketing is when you use your business for the flourishing of others and to uplift others, you are effectively planting seeds in the way that you interact and behave with people. People that like your brand, like your business, like what you do, they are more likely to feel drawn closer towards you. And when people become more closer towards you, they start to consume more of your content, they start to pay attention a little bit more. And when that happens, they are slowly, often subconsciously, and in some cases even intentionally, they are using you as a model on how to behave. You effectively become mentors to people without you even knowing it. People would observe what you do and then they would replicate and imitate your actions. I've done that myself to countless people, but I have studied and listened to their podcasts and content so many times. One example that springs to mind immediately is Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach. In the past, I listened to pretty much every single podcast he did on his 10x Talk podcast, I think it is. And when he co-hosted that with Joe Polish, I pretty much listened to all of his podcasts. I used to listen to it while I was running. And I internalized so many concepts of what he did. And that has become deeply ingrained within me and sort of influences how I make decisions today. Well, Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach, does not know who I am. I am not a client. I've not bought any of their products. It's just that this is how they've had a positive influence on me all these years after listening to their podcasts. So you have a responsibility to model the kind of behavior that you want others to learn from you. So if you want to reflect Christ, you need to model what Christ-likeness actually means and what it is in practice. And you have to reflect that, you have to apply that into your relationships, because as Matthew 22:39 says, that you should love your neighbor as yourself. And if you reflect Christ by loving each and every person that interacts with you in your business through sacrificial love, humble service, you are treating each and every person as image bearers to the best of your ability. And as you're planting seeds without you even knowing it, some of the people that you will influence people in ways that you would not even begin to imagine, whether they become customers or clients or not. And that is why it's so important to treat people as image bearers, both from a theological standpoint and also a practical standpoint. When you stop treating people as image bearers, you then risk drifting away into more transactional thinking. which inevitably will happen, especially when times get a bit tough in your business and you're faced with financial stress. So viewing each person as made in the image of God will allow you to have that integrity, and you can lock onto that as your North Star to guide all the decisions that you have. Number 2, relationships are gifts entrusted to us by God, sometimes briefly, sometimes for a season, or sometimes for a lifetime. Relationships are entrusted to us as a gift from God, sometimes briefly, sometimes for a season, or sometimes for a lifetime. If you view a relationship as a gift, you go into the interaction in a way where you want to help the other person, you want to serve, you want to be a blessing to them, you want to make their day better. If they're struggling, you want to help them, you want to support them, you want to do whatever you can to uplift them and to help them flourish. If you view every relationship as a gift, that is your default mindset. If you don't, you will risk drifting back towards the conventional way of doing business and marketing, which I like to call it the spirit of the marketplace is predominantly transactional, because, well, from personal experience of studying copywriting, marketing, sales for 10 years, the countless books, courses, coaching, everything that I've had focused more so on how you can increase sales and revenue at the expense of, not overtly, but at the expense of serving the person to the best of your ability. And if everyone around you is doing it, you naturally look to others to help guide your own behavior and your own actions. And so if you don't view every relationship as a gift, you're going to potentially drift towards the more transactional way of doing things. I've got countless examples of this in my own life when I've done it unintentionally and I'm aware of it. I've got countless examples of where I actually see this happen, where these people that are strongly involved with the church and then strongly involved in workplace ministry, but yet the actions and things that they do are a little bit inconsistent with what they say, and that's as a result of just trying to imitate what other people are doing in terms of building groups, communities and different things. They're not even aware that they're doing it, and if you were to mention it to them, they would argue against that they're not doing it, but in actual fact they kind of am. And that's what happens when you don't view relationships as gifts. Now, the next part of this principle is that relationships are gifts entrusted to us briefly, for a season, or for a lifetime. And what this means is that when we have... Okay, let me describe what we do at Kingdom Impact Lab. So Barbara manages the discovery process for me on LinkedIn and with content and things. And whenever we interact with a new person, we always have a conversation with them, ask how they're doing, ask what they're up to, if there's any way we can help them without any agenda. People that are struggling, we help them in any way that we can. Some of these people we are only able to help during the discovery because the interaction is brief and then there's no resonance. We try our best to find resonance with people. Not everybody's going to respond in the way that you interact with them, and then 3 days later they've forgotten about who you are. But even in these brief interactions, when we are reaching out to people on LinkedIn and then just giving one-word answers to things and then just not engaging the conversation, we are actively trying to find ways to interact with them and to view each person as made in the image of God and a gift that they've come into our lives. Some of these people then we develop deeper relationships with, some for a few months, some for longer term, and then we continue to build and nurture and help these people flourish in any way that we can. And then we have the lifetime relationships, which may be friends, family, Your clients today can become long-term relationships too. And so it's important to view every relationship as a gift, even if it is just briefly for a day or two through outreach, even if it is just one person commenting in a positive way on your content, but that is a relationship, and to treat them all equally. An important caveat here is that you should treat each relationship equally in terms of the gift, but you should also be aware of stewarding your time in an appropriate way, because the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people that you interact with through business will predominantly be relationships for a very short, brief period of time. Only a small number of these relationships are actually going to grow into something longer, whether that's a long-term business relationship, a collaboration, a partnership, whether they become clients, whether they just become contacts that you turn into relationships and you stay in touch with over longer periods of time. But the vast majority of people are just going to be one-time interactions or a few-time interactions, and then they naturally drop off. Again, I've got countless examples of that. And despite me following up with them, they don't respond, and then it kind of signals that this is, in other words, to put it another way, you don't want to spread your attention equally across all people, but you do want to treat each person equally. The people that do respond and do show resonance, and that you and the other recipient are naturally drawn towards each other, you invest more in these relationships in terms of your time than the people where you are treating them all the same, equally, made in the image of God, but they're not responding in a positive way. You don't want to try and force a relationship. The objective really is to treat each person equally, treat each person as made in the image of God, because you're trying to identify the people that resonate with you, with what you as a person, what you're doing in your business, and then when you can identify those, this is the people that you can build the longer term relationships with. Number 3, the third concept of radical stewardship of relationships is you have to have a desire for the other person to flourish. You have to have a desire for the other person to flourish. This is easier said than done sometimes. It also depends on where you're at in your business. It also depends in what you're doing in your business. However, if we go back to the first principle here of we have to treat each person as made in the image of God, as image bearers, then it's a little bit different, it's a little bit easier. You have to want the people to do well. You have to want them to become the best versions of themselves, in whatever context it is for him helping them, and spiritually, and however you can. And you also have to be aware that you might not be the right person to do it for them, because of the various other issues that would be, not the various other issues, it's you have to be aware that your service that you have may not be the right thing for them and might not be the best thing for the other person, and it might be recommending someone else or not actually accepting them as a client or whatever it is, rather than viewing the person as a way to make money in your business. Again, countless examples of when I've done that, and other examples of what I see. But a desire for the other person to flourish. This again is something that is so important, both for Christians and non-Christians. And you have to really want the other person to do well, because if you don't, you fall into a trap in your own business, where again you potentially faced with financial pressure, and you may then be persuaded by, you may then persuade yourself that you can get someone to sign up and invest in your product or service, even though it's not the best for them, but it's the best for you. I've been on the receiving end of that, and I've been the person that has been signing up for these programs in the past. Again, countless examples of this. But also, if you don't have a desire for the other person to do well, you're not going to be delivering the best service you can. You may tell yourself that you have a desire for the other person to flourish and do well, but actually in practice, if you're honest, perhaps you don't. Another key point here is that it's easier for some businesses than others to do this, because if you're a startup and it's your first business and you are relying heavily on generating revenue this month to pay for next month and all the expenses and all the hardships that go in building a business, it's much harder. If you've already built a business, sold it, you've got millions in the bank account, and then you want a second business as a passion project, you don't have to worry about money. Then it's much easier for people to do it. So just for context of that. The fourth principle is to serve first. So the fourth principle of Radical Stewardship of Relationships is to serve first. There's a whole area of that, but what that means is that you help someone. If someone needs help, help them. If someone needs support, give them support. For me, what I like to do is that if I want to get introductions and referrals, well, you give introductions and referrals first if you want other people to do it for you. If you want to be generous in business, you have to be generous first, and other people will be generous to you. If you want to treat everybody as a transaction and only as a way to make money in your business, and then that's the way that people are going to react to you, which is what happened to me. So a very quick side note here is that before, I viewed my clients and the people with my business as a way to make me money, and then afterwards I got upset when they viewed me only as a transaction themselves, and they ignored all of the other stuff that I did for them. Again, the way that you want others, the way that you treat others is the way that they treat you. So give first before you ask for anything. And the fifth one is to have long-term thinking rather than short-term thinking. And what this means is long-term thinking is you're thinking in terms of decades rather than in terms of the next day, the next week, the next month, the next quarter. And you view relationships in terms of decades rather than in order to become a client immediately. I've listened to a podcast by Myron Golden recently. If you haven't heard him, check him out. And he said that he received a email from someone that had just become a client and said that I've been on your email list and listened to your videos for 10 years and I've only just bought your product or service. So Myron Golden was planting seeds through his content for 10 years, and then this person became a client to him afterwards. And when they did become a client, then the sales cycle is shorter because they've already got the trust built up. They already trust you because they've been following you for such a long time. It's easier to get them to say yes and name a better, higher quality client that requires less time, energy and effort on your end, and they're more motivated as well. And they then fit into the brand that you're trying to build and the community that you're trying to build. Another way is that you then view the relationships that have already been entrusted to you, that are clients or past clients, and you view them over the long term rather than as soon as this project ends, that's when contact stops. You continue to follow up with them, you continue to send messages and help them and offer support and all of these things over the long term. And not only is that the right thing to do, and not only it's a pretty easy way to do, but so few people actually do it, which is a topic for another video. So easy to do, yet so few people do it. But the benefit that you can have is substantially larger than the. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that the output of investing in relationships over the long term, especially with your former and current clients, is exponentially bigger than what you would put in. And that's because if you build these relationships up, especially with people that are happy with your service, the fruits of these, the fruits of this is going to come later through referrals, introductions. You'll get better case studies, better references, better testimonials. People are going to become clients for longer. People are going to, spend more money with your business. They're going to become fans of your business. You're going to have deeper relationships with them. There's opportunities for strategic partnerships with some people. And this is something that only happens over long term. I remember a pastor in our church once saying that your objective is to build something that will outlast you. And this sort of expands your thinking sort of to an eternal perspective. It expands your thinking beyond what you can see immediately. And you should also view your client relationships in the same way, as something that are going to last years rather than weeks or months. Not all clients that you have will respond equally to it. In many ways, I've tried to follow up with former clients in the past, and I've sent them 3-4 messages and nothing from them, no response, no nothing, no acknowledgement. And so you kind of reach a point where if they don't respond, well, there's not really much you can do. But you can only do things to the best of your ability with what you have. But if you have 100 clients, maybe out of those 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe will become lifelong friends over the long term. And then, this is where opportunities are going to come, where you can work with other people that give you an exponentially bigger output than what you put in. And that's the benefit of it. And what does that actually entail? It just entails having a follow-up system in place. For a lack of a better term, I'll use follow-up system, but it's more like a relationship building system. And you just need to have a system in place where it's not necessarily automated, but there needs to be some kind of system, because if you've got 100 people to follow up with, it's hard to keep track of everyone at every time and every message that you send. And this is something that I'm actively building for myself and my own business, and what I want to do with other clients as well. But it's hard to build. It's hard to build the system because you want it as simple as possible. But just on a side note, what I'm actually trying to build is based on the way that charities have their relationship building systems with their donors. And charities have invested a lot of money into relationship building and stewardship of relationships. Because if somebody is going to give you money to donate to a cause like philanthropical reasons, you have to, it's very different because they're giving you money. And so the way that they approach building the relationship is different to the way that we approach relationships when it comes to selling products or services. Because if we sell a product or service, it's quite easy because we can tap into the emotions and desires of what the prospect wants. Again, I'm using this terminology for a lack of a better term now, but we can tap into the desires and pains that the prospect wants, and then we can position our offer and service as the solution to it, and then we can also tie guarantees with like revenue guarantees to it, that you'll get back more when you invested in this program within 3 months of completing it. If you don't, we'll provide you ongoing support at no cost until you do. And so you've got that risk reversal in there as well, which is then quite easy to tip somebody over in order to buy. In terms of the buyer psychology and the way things work. A little bit different when it comes to having someone that donates, because you are heavily reliant on someone generously donating to your cause in order for you to continue your operations. But you also have to come across as not being pushy, because if the donor perceives you to be pushy in any way, then you're going to kind of turn them off, and they're not going to want to continue with you. They're going to feel entitled. They're going to feel like you're entitled to their money, and that relationship there does not feel good. I'm sure you've experienced this yourself in many ways, where you've kind of you've helped someone, and then they just expect more and more and more and more. And Barbara's told me examples of this back in Nigeria, of when she's helped people financially and helped them do this and helped them do that. And then they reach a point where they expect it, and they expect the handouts, they expect the support, and they expect this. And then you find yourself in a position where, well, you don't want to continue because you feel like you're being taken advantage of. Well, that's the same in these charity-donor relationships. So they have to be extremely careful to continue to build the relationship with the donors in a way where they are not coming across as being pushy, or for the donor to feel like they're being taken advantage of in any way, shape or form. And what I'm trying to build my relationship building system on is the way that the charities and the NGOs go about building relationships with their donors. And that's examples of what's the term I'm looking for? I forgot the term. The frequency of emails and the date when you send them out. How often you send emails, the type of emails that you send. It'll be things like gratitude. It'll be things like stories about how their donation has caused impacts for them close to their heart. It's about reminding people the reasons why they cared about this particular cause that they are donating towards. It's not sort of ramming it down your throat, but giving the reasons and showing why it's so important to them. It's trying to introduce them to other people that they may find benefit knowing, or helping them have partnerships with people, or introducing them to the right people. It's referring people to them, to their business, to whatever it is. And all of this here embodies the ethos behind relationship stewardship, stewardship of relationships, and it's what I'm trying to build, so that we can have this long-term thinking, and to do it in a systematized way, so that we can build this system, and then we can set up a way to track it, and then you're able to then send messages out to people, stay in touch with them, stay connected to people, and then naturally some people are going to respond more than others, and over time you're going to notice the people that respond more and the people that respond less, and then this is where you can form the deep relationships with those that respond more, and then the ones that respond less, you have a less frequent way of following up with them. And one way that I'm considering to do for my own business, and if it works for me, it will work for others as well, is to have a personal newsletter that we send out. And this would essentially be, it's not going to be a personal newsletter where you're trying to sell something, but it's going to be just to stay in touch and share things with people about your life, about what you're doing, your personal things, lessons, struggles, and just to show you're a genuine, real human. And people respond best to that. They don't want to be sold to, they don't want things thrown down, thrown at them to try and get you to buy things. They just want a genuine connection with a genuine human. And a personal newsletter does provide the opportunity to that. But this is something that would only really work with people that you have a pre-existing relationship with. Some people are not going to respond to it, but other people are going to love to hear about your hobbies and your struggles this month and what you've learned and all of these things. So that's it, and that was a very long explanation of the long-term thinking side of things, but that is essentially the five core concepts of radical stewardship of relationships. So just to quickly summarize, 1 is we see people made in the image of God and we treat them as such. 2, we view relationships as gifts entrusted to us, which sometimes are for a brief moment in business during discovery, for seasonal relationships, which might be for a project or for a lifetime. It's 3, the sincere desire for the other person to flourish, even if it costs you. Number 4, it's to serve first and to give first. If you want people to send referrals to you, send referrals to them first. And 5, it's long-term thinking, where you focus on building relationships over the next decade. And the way to do that in a way where you don't forget is to build a system that makes it as easy as possible for you to stay in touch with your current and existing clients. And then over periods of time, you can then identify the ones that resonate more and respond more with you, and the ones that don't, and then you can focus more of your own personal attention on the ones that resonate more, and then you can have someone on your team continue to stay in touch with those who don't respond and whatnot. Okay, and that's all. See you in the next video.